Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of In Response Interviews with Intriguing Internalizers. My name is Mia Park. I'm here in Chicago, Illinois. Friday, August 7th, 2020. The world is still pressuring. We got COVID-19. Cases are going up in different spots all over the world, including this country we're in now called America. We're still very much trying to negotiate the historical racial inequalities, especially here in America. And all this is happening. And our guest today is a very lovely human being who's a deep soul and has so many wonderful opinions to share about everything I just talked about. Nicole Taylor, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Oh my gosh, thank you. You really, it's an honor to have you on here. Nicole is in Pennsylvania, close to Philly. And Nicole and I met, I don't know how long ago, at a teacher training in Massachusetts, a yoga teacher training. And we have been friends ever since. Her and I have been all over this country in different parts together, training yoga. We've been in India together. Maybe we were in Mexico together too. I'm not quite sure if that. Yeah, we have been. Yeah. So we've been through a lot of different being together under the context of self-development and healing for ourselves and for others. So, and Nicole she's got her own wonderful resources. She's an author. We'll talk about that in a moment. She does these lovely daily posts of reminders. She has a weekly meditation class you're welcome to join into. We'll tune into that in a second too. And yeah, welcome, Nicole.
Yay, I'm happy to be here with you. Even under the circumstances of what you said, dual pandemic, it's still so nourishing to connect with friends. But I wish I could. This is my air hug.
Those air hug. We have to, I know, a lot of air hugging. Hey, is there anything else you want people to know about you?
No, I think a joyful pause. I'm happy to talk about that a little bit more later. And I did start a podcast a few months ago, just wanting to support people and thinking about how to bring their spiritual practice to bear on what we're seeing in the world at this moment.
That sounds great. Yeah. First, let's get a context, a sense of where you are. So can you talk about what's outside to you now and what that internal response is?
Yeah. So right now, from a physical perspective, what's outside for me is I'm up in the mountains, about an hour and a half north of Philadelphia. And there's plenty of deer, butterflies, trees. It's very quiet and nourishing. And that's from like the physical perspective. I also feel like what's outside of me is just this country reckoning with racism and how that is built into each of the systems. I try not to watch horrible things happening to Black people, but I did look at the video of those young girls from Aurora, the family from Aurora, Colorado, who the young girls were pinned down to the ground by police. And you can hear their cries. And all I could think of was those children are having the felt experience of being treated in a very inhuman way. And the only reason that's happening to them is the color of their skin. And so that feels very present with me, even as I enjoy the privilege of being in such beautiful surroundings. I'm always struggling with the luck of having a house in the Poconos and the felt sense of like something is not right in this country. And we're in the middle of trying to figure out how to address it and hopefully change policy and change police procedure so that that is not something that any human has to look at on the news with such frequency the way that we do.
Yeah, thanks. And if you're hearing this on the podcast, Nicole is African American. Can I ask you a question? Like, I know you're just one person, but do you prefer, like, is there a language that you prefer identifying with? Is it Black? Is it African American? I mean, not everybody of the African diaspora is American, so I don't never know if African American is the best term to use.
I don't know. I think it's a person by person basis. I'm fine with Black and I'm fine with African American. Either one works for me.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty real outside world. And you talked a little bit about how your internal response is to that. Do you have any more to say about that?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I've been finding so much support in the practice of meditation and recitation. As I've been meditating probably for 20 years, but the practice has refined over time. And what the practice does for me is I do have a belief that this changing phenomena, like we're engaged in this life, we incarnated into a body in order to be able to have this individual experience of consciousness. And yet when we turn inward, there's this experience of consciousness that's not impacted by everything that's changing around us. And so meditation helps me to touch that place so that I'm fortified by that inner light. And then when I'm moving through the world, I can take what I know of that light out into the world. And I think it also helps me to just not burn everything down in anger. You know what I mean? Like to come to that inner space of calmness and clarity and love, and to know that whatever is happening amongst us as people, I don't have to internalize that. I don't have to see the images of police treating Black people like they're not human. I don't have to take that in and own that. I need to do something about it in what's mine to do, but I don't have to internalize that. And the practice of meditation helps me to remember who I actually am, regardless of how society may choose to project upon me. So that's
I think
how. Oh, go ahead.
thanks. You said something really profound, and I think that might be provocative for listeners who don't have a meditation practice, because I heard you say that you can observe what's going on in the world without internalizing it, but doing what's yours to do. And I feel like what's happening in the world is so challenging and dangerous and threatening, especially to Black women, honestly. I mean, Black people, but I just feel like with Black women especially, I feel like that your demographic has in America has historically been the one that's constantly being pressed down, suppressed the most. So you talk about meditation being a way to not internalize, but to still meet the world with these challenges. Can you say more about how that happens? Like, what is it about meditation that can fortify you without internalizing all that pressure?
Yeah. I think that the practice of turning inward deeply and turning toward that inner light and that essential nature that each of us has reminds us, or reminds me, of beauty and the joy of being human, and reminds me that I must have decided to come here for a reason, and puts me in touch with what that is. And then when I go back out into the world, when others are putting their own view on me, it's like the practice has helped me to not own that, and to see that that's just something that is coming from outside, and I have to contend with it because I'm moving through the world, but that's their thing. And I also just thought of my dad. He flashed into my head, because some of this is not meditation. Some of this is just being raised to be like, your last name is Taylor, like and that means you're in your power and you are a strong woman and no one tells you who you are, you know who you are. So I think some of that is also just growing up in a way from a very young age that that the outside world doesn't define you, you define you. And meditation, I think, is a reinforcer of that message. And I don't feel like it doesn't keep me separate and hold me apart from what's happening. I think it actually fortifies me to do what I can do to support the changes that I want to see.
That's awesome. I do think that the threat of spiritual bypassing is real in the practices that you and I do and people like us, because it's easy to either avoid your own discomfort, avoid your own accountability, and also just avoid action. So you and I have studied with Panditji Rajmani Tiganayat, who's the spiritual head of Himalayan Institute, an ashram that you and I have both been to a million times, both in India and in America. And one thing I appreciate about his holding the head of a spiritual lineage is that he's about action. Like I always appreciated how his organization is constantly doing nonprofit work, constantly getting out there, boots on the ground, and let's see what we can do to change. Because a lot of spiritual leaders are, to me, spiritual bypassing. Like I get that our existence is deeper than what's happening in this world. And I get that who we really are is not what's happening around us. However, like you, I believe in engaging with what's around us and doing what's ours. So is it through meditation that you can feel what's yours to do and then what's not?
Yeah, I do think that definitely helps. You know, what I have felt like is mine to do is, in some ways, just to speak my experience. I think that, you know, in a lot of spiritual circles, there are not often other people of color, or if there are, there's not a lot. And so in just sharing my experience, so that if anyone was ever like, oh, that doesn't happen, it's like, oh yeah, it does, you know? So I think that's one way to be of support. I think protesting for me feels important when I'm in Philly and there are protests. I think it's important to attend. I think talking to other spiritual people about how are you bringing your practice to meet this moment and not to bypass it is really important. And I do think it's a radical thing to be supporting people in finding inner calm at a time when everything around us feels like it's in upheaval. Because if we are going to come up with solutions to what we're seeing, I've never seen a really good solution come from being completely activated and stirred up. Like there does have to be a sense of inner groundedness to come forth with solutions that are going to be lasting. And so on some level, I think part of what mine is to do is to support people in having calm nervous systems and understanding how self-care and practice can fortify you to both know what's yours to do, but also to take the actions that are yours to take, and not just to sit on the sidelines and be like, oh, well, all I do is meditate. Like, I don't think it stops there. I think meditation is the beginning of creating that inner sense of balance so that you can decide, okay, how do I want to get involved? And I don't think everybody has to get involved the same way. You know, some people's constitution is not for them to be out in the streets, but someone else's really is. Someone's constitution is to do letter writing. I don't know. Like, I don't want to judge other people's way of contributing. But I definitely think it's important to know that we don't all have to contribute the same way. But I do hope that we're all contributing in some way.
Thanks, Nicole. So yeah, tell us about your Sunday night meditation series.
Oh yeah. So Sunday nights at 5 online. It's through Studio 34, which is where I taught when we were able to teach in person. And it's called Meditation Plus. So we begin with a little bit of intention setting, just wanting to form a sense of community, so that so many people are really isolated right now. So just checking in, how are you? what's your intention for the day, and sharing that with one another. Then we do about 10 minutes of asana, or, the physical practice, just to get the energy moving and to make sure that we're ready to sit. And then we do about a 30-minute guided meditation. And that meditation moves through diaphragmatic breathing to alternate nostril breathing to a guided relaxation, and then into the formal practice. So yeah, I just think it's a great way to get ready for the week, and just have like a Friday evening or Sunday evening chill out before the week starts, if that's how your week starts. Yeah.
That sounds great. So that's friends watching and listening. That's 5 p.m. Philadelphia time or Eastern time in the United States. And how can people tune in?
Yeah, so if they can go to my website, ajoyfulpause.com, and on the blog there will be a post with all of the information about it.
Yeah, so A Joyful Pause is your branding, but also there's a book called that.
Yes.
Tell me about the book.
Yes.
I have one. I have a copy.
Oh, I love that you have a copy of it. That means a lot to me. Thank you. Yeah, a joyful pause. I wrote that for people that are going through some sort of transition. So whether it's, a different job or a divorce or some sort of major kind of junction in life where you're like, whatever the occurrence is, has left you a little bit unmoored. A joyful pause is meant to just help you create little breaks in your day for presence. So that could be anything from, setting a timer on your phone so that you're taking 3 belly breaths a couple times a day, to, putting on Black is King on television and dancing for a couple of the songs. Anything, in that full range, just making time to turn inward a little bit and check in with your inner world. That's one thing that's really wild about COVID. It's so unfortunate, all of the economic impact that it has had on so many people. And, and the folks that have contracted it and are kind of managing that's super sad. And I think there's this opportunity, since we're home, to maybe turn inward a little bit more and explore that inner world more. Because I don't know about you, but when I'm in Philly, I'm just like a kid in a candy store, oh, let's go to the orchestra, let's go to the movies, let's do this, let's do that. And it's so easy to just bounce around, which is fun and part of life. But there is something about spending so much more time at home that's like, oh yeah, what's going on inside? And there's just more of a natural, because of this pause, there's more of a natural inclination to do that, I think.
Yeah, thanks for that. Do you think there's a deeper or larger message to what's going on in our world with the racial inequality pandemic set inside of this global health pandemic?
I don't know. I don't know how we would ever know the answer to that. I mean, there's a part of me that loves to wrap things into a perfect package. I'm like, oh, and I know exactly why this is happening. But the truth is, like, who knows why it's happening? I can observe, though, that when we act less on nature, she has been able to heal herself in some pretty significant ways. So I think there's evidence. I don't know that I could say that's why it happened, but I think we can see evidence of, oh, look at pictures of how Delhi looked when airplanes were flying in all the time and people were doing whatever. And now look at how that air looks much clearer. Same thing for LA, So I think there's that piece. I think, there have been so many times that police have been extraordinarily brutal, and yet were people just home and available more? And that's why this one that happened with George Floyd kind of galvanized people into a larger movement. I don't know, but it seems like that could be possible. So I do wonder if we are at an opportunity of learning from this, but I think it can be almost too easy to be like, this happened for a reason. Like, how would anyone actually know that, you know?
Mm.
How about
It's
you? What do you think?
I think that there are no coincidences. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that there's a myriad of reasons why things happen, and that everything is an opportunity to self develop and therefore community develop.
Yeah.
So I think that we have definitely, human beings have definitely set up the bullshit happening right now.
Yeah.
And I think human beings are wonderful, innovative animals. We're also really dumb and we're really, really stubborn. And I think that there's an opportunity for human behavior to shift considering everything going on. Unfortunately, I do not think it's enough. I think that the people who are prone to shift will shift, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
those that are thinking about it will think more about it or start. But I think that the people
Mm-hmm.
who are pretty firmly, stubbornly grounded in their own tracks, you know, in their own
Yeah.
samskara of behavior, their engrooved pattern of behavior, this is not enough cognitive reframing to get them to get out of that groove.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the pressure, the extra pressure we are all feeling is pushing our individual baselines up to the surface.
Yeah.
And that's where the opportunity is for each individual to look at their baseline and see how happy they are with it and what they can do to change it to become happier with who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I'm
agree
kind
with
of
that.
glad. I mean, I'm sorry people died and I'm sorry for the suffering, but I'm glad this happened. I was getting really tired of running around and I was getting tired of people running around. And like you, I'm getting tired of being in a big city.
Yeah. That's been the wildest piece. You know, I love living in the city so much, but being in the city in a pandemic, it's not fun at all. And, you know, I think I do acknowledge that not everyone has the option to leave. So I just want to make sure that I say that because that's not everyone's capability. But I do feel grateful that it's getting into nature has just been such a gift, you know. And even when I am in town, there's this piece of like last weekend I was leading a meditation and hiking event in Fairmount Park. Like, let's get into the parks and still commune with nature, even within city limits, because there's this healing that happens there. And so that's super, super interesting too. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, because people that don't know, Philly's my hometown. My folks are still there, so I'm a Philly girl. But Fairmount Park is the largest inner city park in the world.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like
I
inside
love
of
that.
continuous
Yeah.
park. Fairmount Park is huge, yo. Right? It goes out
It's
into the
so
suburbs.
huge.
And
Yeah.
thank you for bringing out the privilege of nature, because nature should not have to be a privilege for anyone. So, like, I've got some tomato plants and a garden on my back porch. I'm lucky. That's nature enough. So, I think for people who don't have an opportunity to get to the mountains or maybe even are challenged getting to a park, I think nature can be microcosmic. It could be, we talk about throughout blade of grass, whatever, but it really could be this tiny, small thing. We see the sun, we see night, we can feel the air. Hopefully, that'll be inspirational enough for people to connect to nature and what's outside of them. But yeah, girl, you enjoy those mountains.
Yeah. I do. I love the deer. They're so silly.
Are they deer?
Yeah, the deer are deer.
Nicole
Oh.
brings this out in people. He's just going to smile back at her. Oh, cool. We're at about time. So, is there anything else you want to wrap up with, darling?
No, I think all I would wrap up with is I think it's a good time to be questioning, you know. I enjoy interviews and recorded conversations, but I always get a little nervous because it's like this slice in time, you know. And right now, to me, this is a time of questions. I don't feel like I have any answers. I feel like I just have more questions, you know. And so just want to end on that note of, for me, this is an opportunity, I think, for all of us to just engage in inquiry and challenge what we believe to be true, and be open to hear something different.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Ah, lovely. It's like it is a joyful pause talking to this beautiful woman, Nicole Taylor. So thanks, Nicole.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for,
Mia.
oh, thanks for watching, YouTube friends and Facebook friends. Thanks for listening, podcast friends. And it would be great if you wanted to support me and my team putting this series together. I have a Patreon page, patreon.com/Mia Park. Even $1 a month helps us continue these really important conversations. So thanks, everyone. And Nicole, mwah, you get a big heart. You are a big heart. All right, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.